everyone, welcome to our morning edition of Arirang News. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. A man in his 60s was killed in the southwestern county of Muan after more than 140 millimeters of rain fell in the region in just 1 hour on Sunday evening. Meanwhile, up to 120 millimeters of rain is expected in Gyeongsang-namdo province through tomorrow morning. Seoul's top diplomat returned home after his trip to Washington and said the highly anticipated summit between Presidents Lee Jae-myung and Donald Trump will take place sometime this month. Hamas released a new video of an Israeli hostage, looking skeletally thin, the second such video in less than a week. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu expressed anger and vowed to destroy the Palestinian militant group. A man in his 60s has died after being swept away by heavy rain that hit South Korea's southern county of Muan. Authorities continue to be on high alert as more rain is expected in regions including Gyeongsang-namdo province. Our Park Gun-woo has the latest.
One man died on Sunday evening as heavy rain pounded the southern regions of South Korea. The man in his 60s was killed in Muan after being swept away while trying to redirect floodwaters away from his greenhouse. Over 142 millimeters of rain fell in just 1 hour in Muanggung County in Jeollanam-do province, making it one of the heaviest hourly rainfalls recorded since related data was first compiled in 1973. Muan sees an annual rain of around 1,300 millimeters, meaning just over 10% of that fell in a single hour. To put this into perspective, rainfall above 30 millimeters an hour can make car wipers ineffective, while 100 millimeters is enough to make vehicles float. Due to heavy rain, around 2,500 residents in southern regions, including Busan and the surrounding Gyeongsang-namdo province, were also forced to evacuate, with evacuations still underway. Flooding submerged underground parking lots and caused power outages in apartment complexes. Parking at a number of national parks and riverside areas has also been restricted. President Lee Jae-myung on Sunday night called for swift and preemptive action, urging authorities to prioritize rapid response over procedural reporting to minimize damage. He also expressed concern for regions still recovering from last month's floods and vowed to stay on top of the ongoing situation. Though heavy rain alerts for areas including Gwangju were lifted on Monday morning, more downpours in regions like Gyeongsang-namdo are expected. Park Gun-woo, Arirang News.
The first summit between Presidents Lee Jae-myung and Donald Trump will take place within this month, according to Foreign Minister Cho Hyun on Sunday. Speaking upon his return from Washington, D.C., Cho said that the final coordination is being made to arrange a summit within August, but did not disclose the date. In talks with Secretary of State Marco Rubio, the two sides began preparing for a leaders' meeting in D.C. after Trump declared a meeting within 2 weeks. Cho added he and Rubio have reaffirmed the combined defense posture of South Korean and U.S. forces and commitment to extended deterrence. On the matter of alliance modernization, Cho emphasized Seoul's efforts to strengthen defense amid global uncertainty while addressing concerns over ties with China. So as we just heard, officials from South Korea and the United States are working to set a date for a summit between President Lee Jae-myung and U.S. President Donald Trump, which is set to be a key test for Lee's foreign policy. For more on this, we're joined by Professor Robert Kelly, Professor of International Relations at Busan National University. Professor Kelly, thanks for joining us this morning.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So security is expected to be at the top of the agenda when they do meet, and the United States will likely ask Korea to increase its defense contributions. How do you think the talks will play out?
Yeah, I think that's true. I think Donald Trump has made it pretty clear over many years now that he thinks that U.S. allies don't pay enough, that U.S. allies are free riders or cheap riders, they should do more. I actually don't think that critique really applies very well to South Korea, which does have pretty robust defense spending compared to other U.S. allies. But, Trump sort of sees U.S. allies in this kind of monetary, almost mercantile, mercenary sort of way. And so I would imagine that Trump will demand that what's called the Special Measures Agreement be revisited to lift Korea's payment. I believe right now the rough allocation is 50-50, and I would imagine that Donald Trump will ask for more, probably substantially more. He did in his first term.
Right. And could the upcoming summit change the role of American forces in any way that are stationed here? And could this align with a potential shift in Trump's foreign policy toward East Asian countries, as Washington tries to better counter China?
Yeah, I would imagine that Donald Trump will probably use the threat of a withdrawal or restructuring of U.S. forces Korea as a way to strong arm South Korea into paying more. There is an argument that the U.S. military on the ground in Korea is so small that it actually acts more as like a hostage from Chinese and North Korean missiles than it does as an actual fighting force. The U.S. sort of ground force here is pretty small, right? So I think Trump could sort of trade on that and argue, look, we could take these guys out anyway if you don't want to pay more. I would imagine that's kind of the informal quid pro quo that Trump is thinking of. Again, that's sort of the way he spoke the first time. That wouldn't actually be a massive catastrophe for the alliance, as I said. I mean, there is sort of an argument that the placement of U.S. forces here actually sort of weakens the American position because it opens the U.S. up to sort of missile strikes and stuff like that. There is an argument that the U.S. would actually have greater flexibility if its commitment here was solely air and naval. But of course, if you withdrew U.S. forces from on the ground, that would actually sort of like signal to a lot of countries that the United States was leaving. It might encourage capital flight out of South Korea. There's a lot of reasons why the South Koreans want to keep U.S. forces on the ground, even though they're pretty small. And so I would imagine in the end, the South Koreans will probably agree to the higher payment that Trump demands.
I see. In Seoul and Washington, they also recently struck a trade agreement setting the tariff rate at 15%. Could there also be further discussions on the details of the deal when Trump and Lee Jae-myung meet?
Probably because Donald Trump is just all over the place on the tariffs, right? I mean, one of the strange things about Donald Trump when it comes to sort of alliance commitments is that he just doesn't really seem to believe that contract and sort of commitment are actually binding, right? I mean, this is now what, the third trade deal the US and South Korea have struck in 15 years, I think 18 years, right? There was Chorus. They're 1.0 right under Obama, and then it was revised, and then Trump came back in and revised it yet again, right? And so the Chorus agreement has actually been voted on twice, and now Trump came in and just threw all that out and sort of insisted on this deal. It's not even clear if a deal is actually binding. Is it a treaty? Is it going to be ratified by the relevant legislatures? I mean, it's pretty vague, actually, right? And this actually characterizes Trump's trade negotiations with the Europeans and the Japanese too. So it's not unique to what's happening. It's not unique to Korea. But since Trump is so unsettled on what he wants from U.S. trade partners, he changes his mind so often. I would imagine that if South Korea were to make some concessions, for example, on special measures, right, paying more for U.S. forces, that I would imagine Trump might be interested in some kind of tariff cut.
I see. And like you mentioned, Trump has made it clear he's putting American interests, over those of U.S. allies. How do you think the Lee administration should manage its alliance with the United States over the course of his 5-year term?
I think the best thing to do is the same thing that the Moon Jae-in government did, which is to give Trump what he wants for some kind of public relations takeaway. We know that Trump likes to have sort of good media. Give him something that sort of will allow him to go home and claim victory, to claim that he's sort of like got something significant out of the South Koreans, and then try to get Trump to move on. Try to get Trump not to pay attention to Korea, because the more he pays attention, the more he's going to say things like, we should pull out U.S. forces, we should pull U.S. air wings out, and things like that, right? Donald Trump doesn't really care that much about U.S. allies and U.S. commitments to U.S. allies. And so my sense is to divert his attention. The Japanese did this very well when Trump was president the first time, right? Abe Shinzo was prime minister at the time, and he gave Trump that golden golf club and a baseball hat, and it was all really ridiculous, but it worked really well. It sort of placated Trump, and then Trump moved on and worried about other things. And so that's what I would actually counsel. I would counsel the South Koreans give a little bit more to the Americans on tariffs, or on the trade deal, or on the special measures agreement. Get Trump the sort of smallish victory that he wants so he can claim it on Twitter, and then Trump's attention will go away, and then he won't actually shake the real foundations of the alliance. And that's the real threat, is that Trump might come in and say, I don't want to deal with you guys at all anymore. We're leaving. Right? Because Trump has leveled those kinds of threats at other U.S. allies, right? He wanted to invade Greenland and Canada. And that's the kind of explosion you want to avoid. I think the South Koreans should try to avoid, where Trump gets upset, he digs in his heels, and he creates a real alliance rift because he doesn't pay attention. He doesn't know any better.
I see. All right, Professor Kaylee, I'm afraid I guess we'll have to see how that plays out. I'm afraid that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for your insight. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer said Sunday that reciprocal tariff rates are pretty much set, leaving little room for last-minute negotiations. Greer said trade ministers are still willing to talk, but he added the tariff rates were determined pursuant to deals and are based on each country's trade deficit or surplus with the United States. Still, he noted that President Trump may consider adjustments if other countries present meaningful concessions in the coming days. An executive order for tariffs was signed last week, with implementation scheduled for August 7th. Over in the Middle East, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has vowed to eliminate Hamas and secure the release of hostages after videos of two visibly emaciated Israelis being held by the militant group were released. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
Palestinian militant group Hamas has released two videos of two Israeli hostages, Yeviatar David and Ram Bravslavsky. The video released by Hamas on Saturday showed David saying that he hasn't eaten for days and is digging his own grave.
מה שאני עושה עכשיו, אני חופר את הקבר, הקבר שמיד מבחינתי לי, כי כל יום שעובר הגוף שלי הולך, נחלש, נהיה רזה יותר וחלש יותר. מבחינתי זה נראה שאני בדרך למוות שלי.
The video of Ram Bravslavsky was released by Hamas on Thursday, showing the 22-year-old pleading for food, water, and rescue. Both men were abducted from a music festival by Hamas during the October 7, 2023 attacks. In response to the hostage video, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Sunday vowed to destroy Hamas, adding that Israel is determined to free the hostages.
I am filled with even stronger determination to free our kidnapped sons, to eliminate Hamas, and to ensure that Gaza will no longer pose a threat to the state of Israel.
Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump's Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff met with families of hostages held by Hamas on Saturday. There, he told the families that Washington is working with the Israeli government on a plan that would effectively end the war in Gaza. The envoy also said that the militant group was prepared to disarm in a move to end the war. However, the group has repeatedly said it would not lay down its weapons. Witkoff is currently visiting Israel as the U.S. is facing mounting pressure over the worsening humanitarian conditions in the enclave. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
President Lee Jae-myung officially begins his 5-day summer vacation today. According to the presidential office, he's staying on Jeodo Island in Geoje City, Gyeongsangnam-do Province, and plans to reflect on national affairs and recharge by reading and watching films. The top office says it has activated an emergency reporting system as the president intends to continue monitoring key issues, including those related to people's livelihoods. The ruling Democratic Party launched its new leadership at its national convention over the weekend, electing 4-term lawmaker Jung Chung-rae as party leader. Our political correspondent Shin Ha-young reports.
4-term lawmaker Jung Chung-rae has been elected as the new leader of the ruling Democratic Party of Korea. At the party's national convention on Saturday, Chung won with 61.74% of the vote, defeating rival candidate Park Chan-dae, the party's former floor leader. In his acceptance speech, Chung said that he would quickly push ahead with prosecution, media, and judiciary reforms.
As soon as the party convention ends, I will launch task forces to reform the prosecution, media, and judiciary. I will complete these 3 reforms before the Chuseok holiday.
During the press conference, Chung said he is unable to work hand-in-hand with the main opposition People Power Party as it still includes members who support former President Yoon Suk-yeol.
We're at war with the insurrection. It's not about ruling and opposition parties.
Chung also emphasized that he would make sure the party, government, and presidential office work together as one to support the success of the Lee Jae-myung administration. According to the presidential office, President Lee called Chung on Saturday to congratulate him on his win and emphasize the importance of a one-team spirit and working effectively for the people. Saturday's convention was held to fill the leadership vacancy after former party leader Lee Jae-myung was elected president in June. Chung will serve the rest of Lee's term over the next year and lead the party in next year's local elections. First on his public schedule as the new leader, Chung visited the city of Daju in Jeollanam-do province on Sunday to help with flood recovery efforts. Meanwhile, following Kim Min-seok's resignation from the Supreme Council after becoming prime minister, the vacant seat was filled by Hwang Myung-sun, the sole candidate who was elected with a majority of the vote. 신하영, Arirang News.
A day after announcing his departure from Tottenham Hotspur, South Korea's Son Heung-min played what is expected to be his last match in a Spurs shirt in front of a home crowd at the Seoul World Cup Stadium on Sunday. Son played 65 minutes of the sold-out 1-1 draw between Tottenham Hotspur and fellow English Premier League side Newcastle United and received thunderous applause from the 64,000 fans in the stadium when substituted off. During his 9-year career with the club, Son scored 173 goals in 454 matches across all competitions, ranking 5th on Tottenham's all-time scoring list. In May, Son captained Spurs to a UEFA Europa League title, winning the team's first major trophy in 17 years. The Netflix original animation, K-pop Demon Hunters, has become popular both in Korea and overseas, sparking growing interest in Korean shamanism. Our Cho Hyun takes a closer look at why it's so popular and how shamanism has become a key part of new K content.
Set in South Korea, K-pop Demon Hunters follows a popular girl group that protects the human world from evil spirits while uncovering a boy group of Grim Reapers known as 저승사자. The Netflix original animation has become the most viewed original animated movie ever, with its soundtrack also topping the Billboard single charts. Last year, the Korean film Exhuma drew an audience of over 10 million at home and became a hit in Asia and North America, fueled by themes such as feng shui and shamanic rituals. Today, one of the hottest themes in K-content is K-shamanism, or K-musok in Korean, a traditional belief system incorporating rituals, divination, and faith in spirits and deities. With 1,000 years of history, Korean shamanism is a folk tradition where shamans, or mudang, guide people by praying for good fortune and driving away misfortune.
Shamanism exists in many parts of the world, but in Korea, it is unique because of the strong role of mudang. Their traditional music, costumes, and performances have deeply influenced Korean folk arts, giving Korean shamanism a distinct cultural and artistic character.
Unlike the Western view that defines the human world as good and the spirit world as evil, Korean shamanism sees shamans as mediators between the two, a belief that gives K-musok its unique power.
Western occult stories focus on exorcists, while K-pop Demon Hunters shows a more Eastern view. Luni, a half-hunter spirit, and Chinu, a Grim Reaper, reveal human qualities, moving beyond the simple divide of good and evil. Even Hollywood now borrows from Asian values, avoiding absolute dualism, showing how Eastern philosophy is shaping occult content.
Korean shamanism's power as a cult content comes from its cultural freshness rather than religion.
Korea is not tied to a single religion, allowing shamanism to keep its own identity alongside others. Unlike Japan, where cultural images were long ago exhausted by Japonism, Korea's shamanism remains fresh, offering untapped images that enrich today's content.
K-musok content is diversifying and becoming a key icon of K-culture with growing potential. Cho Hyun, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Choi Ji-hee, and this is The World Now. Ukraine launched a drone strike on Sunday targeting an oil depot near the Russian city of Sochi. The first significant attack on the Black Sea resort city in years resulted in 2 oil tanks catching fire. Local authorities in the Krasnodar region confirmed that debris from a downed Ukrainian drone struck 2 fuel tanks, starting a fire. Over 120 firefighters worked to extinguish the blaze, and no casualties were reported. An airport in Sochi, the city that hosted the 2014 Winter Olympics, also briefly suspended operations. According to Russia's defense ministry, 93 Ukrainian drones were intercepted over the Krasnodar region and the Black Sea over the weekend. Pope Leo XIV presided over a closing mass for the Jubilee of Youth in Rome on Sunday, attended by more than 1 million young Catholics, marking the largest public event of his papacy. The Mass at Tor Vergata Field brought together young people from approximately 150 countries alongside 7,000 priests and 450 bishops, marking the close of a week of spiritual and cultural programs. Pope Leo urged the gathering to be the sign that a different world is possible, advocating for peace, fraternity, and resolution through dialogue rather than violence. He expressed solidarity with young people suffering from the wars in Gaza and Ukraine. The Pope encouraged participants to return home and spread your enthusiasm and the witness of your faith. He also said that the next destination for the World Youth Day would be Seoul in 2027. The Krasheninnikov volcano on Russia's Kamchatka Peninsula erupted on Sunday, marking its first confirmed eruption in approximately 600 years. The eruption began around 6 a.m. local time, sending an ash plume up to 6 kilometers into the sky. The event followed a massive 8.8 magnitude earthquake on July 29th and was accompanied by a 7.0 magnitude aftershock, leading many scientists to suggest that seismic triggering had contributed to the eruption. While eruption intensity is decreasing, moderate explosive activity may continue. Scientists traced the last eruption to around 1463, with an estimated margin of error of plus or minus 40 years. Finally, a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket that launched the Crew 11 mission from NASA's Kennedy Space Center on Friday has successfully docked with the International Space Station just 15 hours later. A SpaceX Crew Dragon capsule carried an international team of 4 astronauts from the U.S., Russia, and Japan. Crew 11 will remain aboard the ISS for at least 6 months, possibly up to 8 months, conducting scientific experiments and station maintenance, potentially extending standard rotation durations.
An early morning breeze in the capital area made things feel much more comfortable this morning. In fact, heat alerts have been lifted in most parts of Korea. However, the heavy rain clouds that moved towards the east are dropping heavy showers in the Gyeongsang-do provinces, with heavy rain alerts being in place. So Gyeongsang-do provinces and parts of Jeollanam-do might get up to 80 millimeters of heavy showers. The rest of the southern provinces could see 20 to 60 millimeters. Here in the capital area could get 5 to 10 millimeters through tomorrow morning. And this afternoon, Seoul gets up to 30 degrees Celsius, a couple of degrees lower than Sunday. Gwangju will be much warmer, topping out at 33 degrees Celsius this afternoon. Skies will be mostly clear tomorrow afternoon, but scattered showers are in the forecast nationwide. Then on Wednesday, rain will return across the country with heavy downpours expected in the central parts of Korea. So the heat will not be as intense as last week.
That's all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at 5 p.m. Korea time. Thanks for watching.